Hey, what's going on, Notre Dame fans? I'm Mike Singer. He's Lou Somogyi. We are live on YouTube to talk about Notre Dame being in the college football playoff. Plenty of talk around not only Notre Dame fans, but national pundits, local pundits discussing whether or not the Irish should be in, and Notre Dame is. The playoff matchup set Notre Dame versus Alabama January 1st. 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and Lou, the Rose Bowl in Arlington, Texas. So even 2021 will start off with a weird note, but Lou, I consider you really the voice of reason when it comes to Notre Dame football. So you have a group of Irish fans who are very, very upset, and rightfully so based on last night. And then it seems like today, Lou, and this is reading our blueandgold.com message board, you have a group of fans who are now like, it's the next day. Like, let's take a deep breath here. The sky is not falling. Lou, I will give you the floor. What is your kind of take right now on the state of Notre Dame football heading into the college football playoff?
Well, it's your second playoff in 3 years, and there's not many teams that can say that. Look, we know who the top tier is. It's Alabama and Clemson's world, really, at this point. And Ohio State is always on teetering. They're on the brink as well. They won the national title in 2014, but I don't believe they've won a playoff game since then. So it's been Alabama and Clemson, and then you had the outlier year with LSU last year, and but they've kind of fallen back a little bit. So that was more just a 1 year deal. To become just the super elite, there's really only about two teams, maybe three, that can get to that level. Notre Dame, along with Georgia and Oklahoma and Florida and Texas A&M, are kind of been knocking on that door. And from a perspective of a seasoned you know, body of work, Notre Dame earned that fourth spot. I think throughout what they've been able to accomplish this season, just the fact that you beat Clemson and you see how good they are, regardless of who's in the lineup or not. And then you also beat a top 15 North Carolina team. There's no one else in that group that we mentioned that has that type of resume. So this is not a 1 day deal. This is a 3 month deal as to whether you are worthy for the playoff. And from that perspective, I think they got it right.
Lou, I don't know. Is everyone just kind of discounting November 7th? I feel like, look, this is a show for Notre Dame fans, right? So we are giving our opinions to Notre Dame fans. So, this isn't a show for coaches. This isn't a show for, anyone else. It's for Notre Dame fans. So we at blueandgold.com, we have our message board and we read what fans say on kind of both sides of the aisle. So we want to give our thoughts to maybe change your opinion. That's very hard to do in these days, to change someone's opinion, but maybe to give you a different perspective. So that's why I really wanted to bring Lou Somogyi on, because I always feel like Lou, the biggest thing I've learned from Lou is that the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. So whether it's the sunshine pumper, or as our blueandgold.com message board likes to call them, the bedwetters, truth is probably somewhere in the middle, Lou. So going back to November 7th, kind of feels like people are just discrediting that game. It doesn't matter. Notre Dame still hasn't won the big one. Trevor Lawrence wasn't in that game. What are kind of your thoughts on that, Lou? Because clearly the College Football Playoff Committee took that game in very serious consideration in Notre Dame being ranked as the number 4 team in the country, Lou.
Well, Trevor Lawrence does make a difference. I mean, what he did, and it's not so much just with the passing. Obviously, he's phenomenal in that area, but the part of his game that is always just so underrated is the way they activate him with the zone read. Travis Etienne, he's the all-time leading ACC rusher. With 2 minutes left in the first half yesterday, he still had only 4 carries for 23 yards. But Trevor was opening it up. He was setting Notre Dame up with the read option. They had to start honoring that horizontally. So then he beats them a couple of times vertically with passes. And now that Notre Dame is paying attention to Trevor, both as a passer and as a runner, where he had 90 yards rushing, suddenly now they didn't force ETN. Clemson didn't go into this game, well, doggone it, ETN had 18 carries for 28 yards last time. We're going to show Notre Dame right off the bat. We're going to shove it down his throat and set an example and set the tone and everything else. Like I said, 2 minutes left in the first half, he had only 4 carries. But that final drive, the killer drive with 2:10 left, back at their 7-yard line, he carries 4 times, I believe, for 75 yards, including the 44-yard touchdown on 4th and 1. But that was a testament to what Lawrence was able to do as far as setting it up for that moment with his ability to beat you with his legs. DJ Uiagalelei threw for 439 yards, a record against Notre Dame, but it didn't help their overall game because Notre Dame didn't really need to honor their zone read. We talked about this earlier in the week. Clemson used the Virginia Tech game on December 5th almost like a scrimmage of practicing the inside zone, the outside read with Lawrence as a way to say to Notre Dame, we could have Trevor throw for 400 yards against Virginia Tech and, help his Heisman candidacy and all that with stats. That's not what's going to help us beat Notre Dame. It was to create that balanced look where Notre Dame had to honor all areas of the offense. And that's exactly how it played out. And that's where the difference with Lawrence was.
All right, Lou, let's take a quick look at Alabama, Notre Dame's opponents. Um, Crimson Tide opened up as a 17.5 point favorite, and I believe the line elsewhere has even gone up to 20 points. Mac Jones, 250 of 327. That completion percentage 76.5. Lou, that's incredible. This is through 11 games, 3,739 yards, passing over 300 yards per game, 32 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Been sacked just 10 times this season, Lou. These stats are on Yahoo. I believe Ian Book was sacked 5 times just on 3rd down against Clemson, and Mac Jones has been sacked 10 times the entire season. He is certainly a Heisman candidate. Najee Harris, 214 rushes this season, 1,262 yards, 24 touchdowns. He's had one heck of a season. Devonta Smith, the receiver, he has been incredible. The Crimson Tide have had such good receivers in the past decade. Julio Jones, all of the guys that they've had. Jerry Jeudy, Calvin Ridley, Devonta Smith follows in that. Pedigree, 98 receptions, 1,511 yards, 17 touchdowns. You could make a strong argument that the Heisman Trophy finalists could just be Smith, Harris, and Mac Jones. Certainly not expecting that, but they have been very good this season. So, Lou, kind of opening thoughts. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of talk in the next couple of weeks about the last time that these two teams met in a big stage, and Notre Dame certainly was ran off the field, and Irish fans are going to hope that does not happen again.
That SEC championship game, which they won 52-46 against Florida, is kind of a perfect game for Nick Saban to prepare for the playoffs. They won the SEC championship, but there's a lot to really go over on defense. And they had that earlier in the year when they beat Ole Miss 63-48, and the defense significantly improved after that for Alabama. So in many ways, that was an ideal type of situation for Saban in that, yes, you want another SEC title, but now you can hammer and hammer and hammer the defense about you will never win a championship with that kind of performance against Notre Dame, never mind potentially Clemson or even Ohio State. So that works in his favor. Um, with Brian Kelly and the team, I would like to think that this does create uh, sort of like what it created for Clemson after they lost to Notre Dame. Just that hunger to want to redeem yourself. They hear it now that they might not belong, and that Clemson is or Alabama's going to be a 17 to who knows 21-point favorite and all. Can they use that as motivation, or does this have a lingering residual effect on Notre Dame? This kind of defeat, their confidence gets shaken. Does the potential absence, or maybe a Nick McLeod and Kyle Hamilton in the defensive backfield not being at 100%, kind of leave them even more exploited back there? I do like the fact the quarterbacks I hate facing most, the ones that I absolutely hate facing the most, are the ones who can also beat you with their legs. We know how great Trevor Lawrence is with his arm, but I feared his legs even more because that was going to open everything else. You're not going to have that with Mac Jones, and they lost their star center as well. So that can create some problems along the front, as we've seen at Notre Dame when you lose that center in the middle there, and cause a lot of the line adjustments and everything else. But Mac Jones has -1 yards rushing this year. That's
Mm.
even with just being sacked 5 or 6 times. So that's not a threat. And from that perspective, I always like a Clark Lee defense when they're able to concentrate on one area. And just like they did with Travis Etienne when DJ was the quarterback on November 7th, is let's take away Najee Harris. Let's take away well, they may throw for a lot of yardage, probably will, but let's take this part of the game away and maybe make them one dimensional. Now, Alabama can be very good even one dimensional, but if they try to force it maybe just too much, that could create problems. This is the type of game, though, it's more about the Notre Dame offense. Is can they score minimum just to have a chance? They
30.
have to at least get to 30,
Yeah.
but probably more so 35, just to have a chance. Because this is an Alabama team that in the opener they scored only 38, and since then they've averaged over 50. They just are scoring at will, and in these type of marquee settings, Notre Dame, the 7 losses that Notre Dame has since 2017, they average 13 points a game, and they're usually rushing under 50 yards. They had 44 yesterday, which was the lowest since, that Alabama game in January of 2013. They had 46 at Georgia last year. They had 47 at Michigan last year. They had 55 against Georgia in 2017. They had 88 against Clemson in the playoff 2 years ago. And the Miami game, 41-8. Everyone talks about the defense. Can they slow them down? The offense has got to be able to put up those 35 points. And against an Alabama defense that just gave up 46 to Florida and will be probably hearing about it and really prepping hard to atone for that, that's going to be quite the challenge.
You mentioned Alabama center. That's Landon Dickerson.
Yeah.
Nick Saban announced today that he's going to be out for the rest of the season. So a hit there to the Crimson Tide. He is out with an injury. Lou, you mentioned kind of the past embarrassing defeats there. Where would you maybe not rank this one on Saturday, going back to the ACC championship game? Where would you compare that with the 2018 game? Was it pretty similar? I mean, I've seen Notre Dame fans say that this one was worse. I would disagree because Notre Dame has still a chance to win the national championship game, while that one just ended it. And at least, hey, Notre Dame scored a touchdown in this game, and similar to the 2018 game, the first half was very competitive. maybe for this one, it wasn't so much, later in the second half. But thoughts there, Lou?
It's funny you bring up that question because I always remember back in 2011, Notre Dame lost a home game here to USC, 31-17, and Brian Kelly was asked after the game, "Where do you rate this among your losses?" And he said, "Well, I don't really keep a stinkometer in my office or anything to rate these kind of losses. They all stink." And what was amazing, Mike, is how similar it was to that 2018 playoff game. In that game as well, Notre Dame was competing well in the first quarter. It was 3-3. They kicked off, and it looked like they had recovered a fumbled kickoff inside the 10-yard line of Clemson. It's like, oh, this can help change the complexion. They have the momentum and all, but it was overruled, and Clemson got the ball back. And then all of a sudden, bam, bam, bam. 3 touchdowns. It's 24-3 at halftime. Same here. Notre Dame is controlling the first quarter, have 11 minutes of possession time out of the 15. It's up. They're up 3-0. 2 minutes left in the first quarter. First and goal at the Clemson 10-yard line. Right there, I'm saying you can't get a field goal out of this. You've got to score. You got to make it a 2-possession game and put a little game pressure on them. So that not only they not score the touchdown, they missed the field goal. And 3 plays later, it's 7-3. Bam, bam, bam. Same halftime score, 24-3. And just like in 2018, it's 17-3, and Clemson takes possession at its 20 with 48 seconds left. And they score with 2 seconds left. That's a backbreaker,
Yeah,
just the one that
dagger.
can crush the spirit. So it's 24-3 at halftime. Same thing yesterday. It's 17-3. 2 minutes left. Clemson is back at its 7-yard line. On the second play, Ade Ogundeji almost gets Trevor Lawrence for a safety in the end zone. He
Mm.
shakes off the tackle, throws the ball away, and then all of a sudden they're at midfield. It's 4th and 1 at the 44-yard line. They go for it. If they miss it, then maybe Notre Dame can get in position for its own score right before halftime, take some momentum away. They not only get the first down, with 21 seconds left, ETN goes 44 yards for a touchdown. Again, just that's the crusher of the spirit. Now, to Notre Dame's credit, in both games, the defense responded very well, I thought, in the second half.
Yes.
Clemson's first 2 possessions in the second half were from its own 40 and 45-yard line. And I was thinking, oh, here's where the blowout really is coming in. The defense responded well. They played hard. They limited them to 10 points. Now, obviously, Clemson was also in like a running the clock mode. It's like just finish off the game. Let's not get any major injuries, etc. And they won 34-10, just like 30-3 in 2018. The similarities were the eerily similar, and so were the total yardage figures. It was just off by 4 or 5 yards on each side in both games. So, like I said, there's no stinkometer measuring it because they hurt either way.
Yeah, Lou, good points. Mike Goolsby in our live show on Saturday after the game pointed to the Avery Davis drop as that's where it really went wrong. Notre Dame looked. It was like, all right, it looked like a continuation of the November 7th game where Notre Dame was just as good as Clemson, and even in 2018, Lou, and I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, early in that game, it was a battle, and then the wheels just kind of fall off, and Clemson is just too good of a team to let the wheels fall off, and it's really hard to recover. In the defense, like you mentioned, did come out in the second half, but the offense just did not. And
Well,
Notre Dame can play with these guys. They beat them. Like that win counts. The win in November 7th counts. Yes, Trevor Lawrence was very, very good. One of the best college quarterbacks I've ever seen. But it's not like he was replaced with a pile of trash. Like DJ Uiagalelei is very good. A different quarterback. Trevor Lawrence is definitely better right now. But I think in 10 years from now, DJ is going to be tearing it up. in the NFL. And yes, the defensive starters hurt Clemson, but I'm passionate about the people who just say that game just doesn't matter and that wasn't a real win. Like that was a real thing. Like you look in the NFL, two teams can play each other, and it's an any given Sunday thing. A team can blow another team out, and then the next time they play, it's a reverse blowout. The other team now
Yeah.
is blowing it out. So I
All
don't
right.
know, Lou.
Yeah, look at it this way, Mike. I mean, with a freshman quarterback in November, Clemson scored 33 points. With a generational quarterback, they scored 34 points. I'm talking in regulation
Right.
time, 3 points there, not including the overtime. But I felt still that it was going to be on the defensive side where the difference was going to be more pronounced, that you got back Tyler Davis along the line, that you got back James Skalski in the middle, and then another linebacker on the outside. And the fact that Notre Dame didn't have Jared Patterson, suddenly that gap got closed significantly as well. And there is just there is a determination. Look, Clemson's pride was wounded tremendously, getting outrushed 208 to 34 in that first game. And here, that was a difference of 174. In this game, it's Clemson 219, Notre Dame 44, a difference
Right.
of 175. And also third down conversions. First game, Notre Dame was 52%, 53%. Clemson was 26%. This game, complete opposite. Clemson 57%, Notre Dame 25%. Notre Dame converted its first two third downs during the opening field goal
Yep.
drive and then went 1 for 10 thereafter. And that's not even including the um, play book to Davis. It was catchable, but he was running in full stride, and it was a little behind him. And when the ball is going that fast, and you're going so fast the other way, it's not the easiest
He
catch. I'm not.
was he was
I'm
he was hauling ass too. Yeah,
Yeah,
Davis was
yeah.
running hard.
I'm not trying to be an apologist or anything. It was a more difficult catch than maybe it might have looked to. So.
Yeah. Super chat from Michael Ryan, big supporter of our Blue and Gold YouTube page. He says, thanks for the show today. Yesterday was difficult. Glad these young men have the chance to play again. Lou, just real quick, I want to get your thoughts on this. Um, there's been some fans who say, I would rather this team go play in the Orange Bowl against like an Oklahoma rather than play Alabama and potentially have, just the rails beaten off of us. What do you think, Lou?
Well, who's to say Oklahoma wouldn't beat the rails off them in the regular bowl game too? You play the season to get to this level. In the Notre Dame football auditorium, when they put out the schedule up on the wall there, the regular season schedule, they also always include at the end the college football playoff, because that is our objective. We need to be in there. And this is the second time in 3 years they're in there. It's no different than playing the lottery. You can't win if you don't play. Uh, who knows? Maybe Alabama gets a major case of COVID cases or things like that. You put yourself in that position to try to win. And, the day where Notre Dame says, well, we don't want to face that challenge, then it ceases to become Notre Dame thereafter. That would be going against everything that the program and the overall school and operation believe in. So that's I don't buy it.
Sure. Question. We have this our live show up on our blueandgold.com message board. RRH1. He asks, Lou, does getting to the playoffs again cement Notre Dame as a top 7 program? Maybe cement isn't the right word because cement means it's set. And that is something that changes all the time from year to year. And if you ask a Notre Dame fan, from hour to hour, game by game, but in your opinion, Lou, Notre Dame top 7 program right now, for me, I think you absolutely have to argue that as a strong yes.
When you talk about programs, I don't talk about 1 year. You talk about 4 years, just like Alabama and Clemson are not one-shot deals. They've been doing this. Alabama's been doing it since 2009. Um, or even 2008 when they were 12-2. Clemson has been, since pretty much, I would venture to say even 2012, 2011, they've been kind of on the upswing since then. One game doesn't say you've arrived. When they beat Clemson in November, that says, okay, we're on their level. We're just, no, you're not. Clemson has won multiple national championships and numerous other playoff games and big games and conference titles. You're not on that level just because you beat them any more than, when South Florida or Tulsa won at Notre Dame, they're at the same level now as Notre Dame. No, they're not. it's it's a consistency aspect. Over the last 4 years, Notre Dame is that second tier team. You have your tier one with Alabama, Clemson, and you can maybe put Ohio State in there, kind of teetering right there.
Sure.
And then you have, like I said at the beginning of the show, you have Notre Dame and Oklahoma and Georgia and Florida. Texas A&M is getting in there. Jimbo Fisher is a national title coach elsewhere. He and his staff are recruiting extremely well at Texas A&M. So they're, knocking on that door too. So it's been 4 years. If this was just the first year, would I say they're a top seven type program? I don't know, but you can probably take 4 through 10 or 11. And look, LSU, they won the national title last year. Is it a top seven program? Maybe. But how did they do in 2015, 2016, 17, 18, and
20.
20?
Right.
You know, it, that one, if you gave me a choice, one national title over 10 years and going like 8-4 the other nine, I would take that over going 10-2, 11-2, 10 straight years, but no title, because that's forever. That gets put up there in that banner, that play like a champion sign. And I know some might disagree with that, but it takes more than that to be an overall top seven type of program.
So, Lou, this just puts maybe a bow on how crazy 2020 has been. Just imagine entering this year and you hearing this: Notre Dame is the first loser of a conference championship game to make the playoff. Like, on so many levels, how crazy is that, Lou? Did you ever think you'd read that headline?
Yeah, that's the playoff. But I remember, gosh, Nebraska in 2001, they got just boat raced by Miami in the 2001 championship game. I think Nebraska lost to Colorado 62-24 in the last regular season game that season, and still made the playoff, or made the championship
Right.
game against Miami, because so many other teams lost their conference playoff games. And it's like, well, we got to put Nebraska in there now. So, those things happen. Look, Alabama lost home games in November in 2011 and 2012, but still won the national titles. Now, those weren't blowouts, but those, you still lost them at home in November, which used to be the death knell for competing in championships. Ask Notre Dame in '93 when they beat number one Florida State in November, but lost the next week, and it cost them the national title.
Do you think Notre Dame's coming into this game with kind of a nothing to lose, back against the wall, let's play loose? I think Adam Bowers has been commenting like, what do we need to do? Like, what? I think he kind of wants us to just convince him. Um, what is it that is even possible for us to get here? Here's his comment: Mike and Lou, tell me how we can do this. How can Notre Dame pull off the win, Lou? I feel like for me, it's play loose, you know, trick plays, maybe an onside kick here and there. Not that Notre Dame needs to come out desperate, because Notre Dame has proved that they can play at this level, in my opinion, at least, by beating Clemson and going on the road and handling North Carolina, a top 15 program. But so I'm not saying Notre Dame needs to come out desperate, but I think they need to go into their bag of tricks. They're 18-point dogs for a reason.
Yeah. You bring up a good point with that. It's not desperation, but there has to be an urgency. And trick plays and things like that. Yeah, you
Like they
can.
need a defensive touchdown, maybe a special teams
Special teams
play.
touchdowns, sure. And I think more than anything, what's going to be really, really crucial is to stay in the game in that first half. Like when they beat Clemson in November, when Jeremiah Owusu had that fumble return. First of all, it's a defensive touchdown, but now you're up 20-10, and all of a sudden you're starting to believe. It's like, you know, we thought we expected to, but now we are actually doing it. If Alabama comes out bang bang, 14-0 with their first two possessions, just slap you in the face like that. That can. I don't want to say it would crush Notre Dame's spirit, but I think a lot of flashbacks would occur that, oh boy, this is what happens again. You have to take advantage early. Notre Dame, those first three series against Clemson, my gosh, they were moving the ball. It looked like, okay, this is the Notre Dame we've seen during the year. Ian Book is making some magic with his feet and everything, but all of a sudden, you're limited to a field goal on the first series instead of a touchdown. You have a first and goal at the 10 on the second series and come away with no points. You get to the 21-yard line or so on the third series, and on 4th and 3 are unable to convert when the receiver is open. Those things can take a mental toll on you. When you play a Clemson or an Alabama, you need to just be able to take advantage of every opportunity that is presented to you. And you have to put up 7 points and not settle for 3, because you're not winning these games 14-10 or 17-14 or even 24-21.
Right.
These games are going to likely go into their 30s because that other team is going to score unless you can generate 4, 5, 6 turnovers, which is rare.
Or when you attempt a field goal, you need the 3 points. If you are going to settle for a field goal, you need that. Before we get
Yeah,
out of here, Lou, go ahead.
yeah. I was even when they were setting up for the field goal at 3-0. I just said, "Gosh, that's even if they make it, it's a one-score game, and that can change just like that." And then when it was missed, and 3 plays later at 7-3, that's when you started sensing, okay, floodgates might be opening here.
Before we get out of here, quick thing. This typically our shows go about an hour. We wanted this one about a half hour. Um, Thoughts on the Sugar Bowl, the other playoff game, Lou? Clemson, Ohio State. Tigers open as a 7 point favorite. What are your thoughts on that game, Lou? Any feeling? I mean, it might just be a Clemson Alabama collision course kind of thing. Like these are just the best two teams in college football, and but I thought that line was a little high.
No, I think, given that Ohio State had its struggles with Northwestern, who's, always a well-coached team, um, I can see the fact that it was only uh, 12 points there with the victory, that there might not be as strong as impression as what Clemson did, uh, peaking against maybe hitting their peak against Notre Dame in this game, both defensively and offensively, getting ETN involved and all. No, I think that's about right. Clemson has beaten them in the last two playoff series. And then, I think the game that ended the Clemsoning moniker there, that derogatory term, was when they defeated, I think it was 40-35, Urban Meyer's Ohio State team in the 2014 Orange Bowl. That's the first time where you said, wow, maybe Clemson might be coming out of it and that they're real. That was the game that started to maybe turn it around for them as far as going from a solid second tier program to the elite level.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up this live show. We will have recruiting podcast posted this week on our YouTube page. Of course, go to blueandgold.com for all of your Fighting Irish coverage. You can use that promo code BGI30 to get a 30-day free trial. See what you think about our coverage with that free trial. That's blueandgold.com. And again, National Signing Day coverage. Still have plenty to do from that, and then previewing the Rose Bowl in Texas, Lou. We will have plenty of coverage, not only in our YouTube page here, so please subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as, again, go into blueandgold.com.